Hello everyone, my name is Lukasz Kabzinski, I'm 36 years old. This is part 2 of the Spy Airline documentary. In this part I will be covering 2 days immediately following the camping trip, July 12th and 13th of 2020. If you haven't seen part 1, click on a link down below at the very bottom of the video. In the meantime, I would like to invite you to subscribing to my Facebook page, Spy Airlines 2021, also my website, spyairline.com, and all other social media accounts that I have. Obviously this video is free of charge, so if anyone charged you any money for watching this video, make sure to request money back. This video is absolutely free of charge. Everything that I present here can be treated as testimony under penalty of perjury. The purpose of this documentary is essentially to bring all the perpetrators to justice. So a quick recap of part 1. In 2020, I was employed as an analyst for a leading private aviation company. In June 2020, when all the restrictions loosened, I went to Poland for vacation, for holidays, and I was invited to this camping trip by a friend of mine whom I hadn't seen at the time for 5 years. During this camping trip, I blacked out, I lost consciousness. I didn't think much about it at the time. Later, it became apparent to me that the reason I lost my consciousness wasn't caused by alcohol itself. What I managed to establish by visiting the same estate that we are camping on and talking to the owner of the estate in December 2020, I managed to establish that after I passed out, there were more than 20 individuals that arrived at that estate after I lost my consciousness.
Przyjechali, nie? W nocy. Ekipa. I tak z ciekawości, ile tych osób było, jak tu przyjechali? To było 10 osób, 15, 20 czy więcej? Chyba grupa taka.
Dużo, nie? 30. Było. Właśnie, nie liczyłem, kurde.
Ale sporo, nie? I to było tak, ale co, 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus?
Nie, to koło ponad 20. Ponad 20. Ale nie liczyłem, to nie było.
Ale pewnie, a proporcja kobiet, mężczyzn, to było więcej kobiet czy mężczyzn?
Nie, mężczyzn.
Ale kobiet, 30% kobiet, 70% mężczyzn, czy...
Razy nie byłem ściczki. No pewnie to. No nawet byłem przejść 2 razy tam byłem kołować. No, a gdzie my byliśmy? To nie było łące. Na łące? Nie. Na łące to nie było w pomieszczeniu? Nie. W pomieszczeniu to było, na drugi, na rano, tak? Zrobiliśmy sobie, a w którym pomieszczeniu to było? Można to zobaczyć to pomieszczenie?
Once he said this, he quickly changed his narrative. He started talking about things that were in my recollection, but the way he was talking about them as if he was telling me something new. He told me everything that happened till I lost my consciousness, which is around 9 p.m. and after 4 a.m. when I woke up. Those things were in my recollection, but it seems like he realized that he told me something that he shouldn't have told me, and he had to improvise, quickly come up with something, right? And that was probably the easiest way he could have come up with, telling me things that I knew about, but in a way as if I didn't know them. Here's a transcript of my conversation with Franciszek. One thing to caveat about translations is certain nuances obviously are not translatable. They may not be as apparent as they are in Polish. Here are some conversations from late afternoon and evening of July 11th that I did not include in part 1. These are videos that I already included in part 1, sent them in the very evening of July 11th, around 2 hours before I lost my consciousness. And this is July 12th, morning hours of July 12, 2020. First message from Franciszek, he's asking about the party. Then he sent me a video, a YouTube video that I did not watch at the time. Maybe there's some sort of cryptic message behind it. It was an election day, it was somewhat relevant. Conversations with him, his messages, poor you, alone, not drunk enough, that he would like to see an amount of alcohol that would knock me off my feet. For some reason he mentions 5 liters of good whiskey with Coke. Very interesting. At the time it was nothing out of character, it was just banter. I didn't associate any meanings to those messages at the time. My last video from 11th of July was around 9:30 when I lost my consciousness. That's literally seconds before losing my consciousness, literally a timestamp. This is where we left off in part 1, when I bought new batteries, checked myself with the breathalyzer, showed up as 0. I cracked on with my journey back home with Sebastian. Sebastian waited for me in the car the whole time. We had a conversation about the camping trip. Sebastian said that it was the very worst camping trip that he ever participated in. I immediately started talking about my For some reason, he was very hostile to me throughout the camping trip. I asked Sebastian what he did for a living. Sebastian mentioned that he used to work for some sort of marketing agency, but because of a drug problem, he was fired. Wife divorced him or something along those lines. He used to live in a villa and he was ruined by drugs. Quite memorable. Then we started talking about Thomas. He supposedly was a delivery driver. He was delivering bread, and before that, he supposedly had a meat plant that was shut down by sanitary services because he was caught selling expired meat. So that was super memorable. He also mentioned something along the lines of a friend of theirs who got some strange cancer and had to have his genitalia removed, which sounded super bizarre. Very memorable, as you can probably tell. The most memorable thing, however, was he told me a story about his workplace. Sebastian works as a security guard in a customs office. He told me a story about break-in to a customs office that he works in as a security guard. There was a shipment of confiscated cigarettes worth around 5-6 million zlotys, around 1 million pounds, that was transported in secret from a customs office in Gdynia to a customs office in Gdańsk where he works in as a security guard. That customs office was broken into during a night. Security cameras were turned off. There were no security cameras because supposedly some female employees made complaints about the supposed noise that those cameras were making. As ridiculous as it sounds, he told me a story of those burglars showing up during the night in some sort of a truck. They drilled a hole in the wall and they were stealing those boxes throughout the night. They were carrying them throughout the night as if it was a shipment of sorts. At least that's how it sounded like. Then after they were done, they covered up the hole in the wall and they drove off. As ridiculous as it sounds, I later checked whether this event actually happened. It sounded like a joke, to be honest, and it did. There's an article describing the break-in in detail. Told me that he was interviewed about this by the police, that he was interviewed for 8 hours, that he wrote everything on a piece of paper with a pencil for some reason, and at the end of that interview he asked the police officers whether they want to interview him with a lie detector, and they told him that there's no need. It just sounded hilarious. It just in part 1, if you remember, I mentioned a female co-worker from that private aviation company. What's interesting is that she posted an Instagram story. Now, she posted that story during the night of that break-in. Obviously at the time it was completely unbeknownst to me. It's only when I started investigating this whole thing. Now, on its own, it would just look coincidental. In the entire context of this case, these people communicate cryptically through social media. In Polish slang, hay means money. In addition to that, as you can see, there was a pile of hay next to where we were camping at. And when we departed on July 12th, some of the guys put a pair of old shoes into that haystack pile of manure. They took pictures of that, and Thomas posted those pictures on his Facebook wall, postscriptum, who was left in that pile of manure. It's definitely an inside joke of sorts. Also, when I posted a picture from my first flight on a private jet, employees of this company have it as a work perk. They can actually fly on private jets. I'm not going to go into details of how this works, but I was lucky enough to be able to fly on a private jet from London to Munich in February of 2020. This is the picture that I posted on Instagram. One of my co-workers commented on that post, hey, for some reason. On the way back, I noticed a comment on my Facebook post from one of my former wedding clients. Studio.pl, my wedding videography business that I have been running since 2013. concurrently to my day jobs in London. I would fly to Poland and back just for the weekend. Now she knows why she can't get some minor changes done to her video. Now she knows why. And I deleted her comment. I didn't think about this twice, it looked quite negative. I didn't think twice about it. Only when I started investigating this case, only when I learned that something might have happened that night in November 2020, I realized that something might have happened that night, and I questioned her about this comment that she made on July 12, and this is what she wrote. Don't recall posting anything that night on my Facebook and later on deleting that. There were Instagram stories that I posted as well. They were later deleted from my archive. It's apparent that someone at the very least had control of my mobile phone. Surely it couldn't have been me who posted that, because I was, according to all the other participants of the camping trip, I was asleep between half 9 and 4 a.m. On the way back, we stopped by at a local KFC. I ordered some food for myself and Sebastian. What was memorable from that visit is when we sat outside to have our food, Sebastian looked at me in a very strange way, in a very odd way. It was definitely memorable. At the time, I didn't think about it twice, as if he was trying to say sorry with his facial expression. Very out of place. Sebastian is he's a funny guy and everything. We drove off and I took the wrong exit. We went backwards towards Łódź, completely opposite way, and then obviously I took the nearest exit. I then turned around. There was a piece of road that was under construction, under renovation, temporary yellow lines. Paid a little bit too much attention on those temporary lines, making sure that I'm on the right path. It was a close call, right? I hit the brakes just in time. The other driver was an elderly couple. They didn't seem to be paying that much attention. I was super tired, and I remember veering off to the left on a couple of occasions, and at some point even Sebastian took notice and he said, drive fucking straight. Yeah, I was definitely tired. So when I dropped Sebastian off at the gas station where I picked him up the day before, what was interesting is instead of going straight on the paved walk, he went through a hedge fence. Maybe he was trying to take a shortcut. Maybe he was trying to create an impression that he came back from somewhere else, that he didn't come back with me. Very strange. It looked somewhat funny. It looked like that meme with Homer Simpson. That's how it looked like. It was very memorable. Next thing I did is I called the rental company's customer service because I needed to refuel the car. There's certain procedures. They have a procedure. There's a debit card in the trunk. Customer service lady was in a very good mood. As a matter of fact, I remember her giggling. That was quite memorable. I drove home. It's not a very long drive. It's like 10 minutes. And I remember when I stepped into my parents' flat, the first thing I noticed was the smell. This is when I could smell myself. Immediately had to take a shower. Now my parents were standing in the corner of the living room. They were looking at something on a mobile device. They were standing in the corner of the living room. They looked at me in a very strange way. That was definitely memorable. It was July 12, 2020, the presidential election day. Car rental was 48 hours technically. I could still use it, so I figured I can just drive everyone to the polling station. I went outside, started the car, and I was waiting for my parents and my brother. As I was doing so, a car appeared behind me, directly behind me, passed me, and then turned around and stopped directly behind me. Most likely a Volkswagen P5, the older model, either in black or dark green. What was memorable, the driver was looking directly at me. That driver followed me all the way on the street. Then as I passed through the intersection, he turned into street. My dad took a couple of pictures. Those pictures were sent to me. Those pictures disappeared from my gallery along with other files. I managed to recover them. As you can see, it begs a question, why would someone want to delete these pictures, right? The map of my journey throughout those 2 days, right, July 11th and 12th, disappeared as well. Someone deleted an invoice from this trip from my mailbox. It begs a question, why? Why would someone delete that from my mailbox? The lender at that rental company's name.com, as if I had a conversation with that person and I never did. It shows up, very interesting. In conjunction with other deleted bits that are relevant to this case, this is another example, deleted trip to the polling station. This trip was deleted from my Google timeline history. Question is, who would do that? This company went out of business in December of 2021. Very interesting. When I was driving them back, I hit a speed bump. My dad, he made a remark about this. He said something along the lines of drive slowly. That got me pissed off for a reason, and it shouldn't have. And I told him, you know what, I'll drive however I want. And I made a couple of accelerations and stops. Like, I'm gonna drive the way I want. Definitely made them a little bit stressed. When we got home, obviously my parents were a little bit shaken, because obviously that's not the kind of behavior that they're used to. I apologized them and I gave them a hug. I felt this sudden urge to apologize them. Also out of character, I'm not a very emotional person. Very strange. The reason I suspect this might have been some sort of an after effect of drug use, because one of the main suspects in this case, around a month later, mentioned this particular drug in our WhatsApp conversation. I think it's reasonable to suspect that I might have been subjected to that particular drug, or might have been an after effect of sorts. And obviously I don't take any drugs, so thing of this nature. Now later on the same day, I noticed a lot of strange, interesting social media activity, unusual social media activity. So this is Mateusz. He is mentioned in part 1, probably the most popular cop in Poland, social media activity wise. Definitely caught my attention. Pretty much the same circle of acquaintances, friends, airsoft reenactment. This conversation caught my attention. It looks very out of place. As you can see, these people are mentioning penal codes, articles. I have never seen a conversation like this. Those parts are definitely out of place and they look very unusual. It looks very suspicious. Sexual activity against someone's will, abduction, drugging, all looks too specific for random banter on social media. I mean, it's quite obvious. This conversation definitely caught my attention on that day. I did not make any association with that camping trip until November of 2020 when I started investigating. I realized that something might have happened. Okay, this may not be the prettiest, the most perfect translation of the penal code. Person on the left, his name is Martin. The very next part I'll be mentioning him, so you might as well take a note. Now this one is Mateusz. His Instagram. On July 12, 2020, he hosted a live video with another policeman from Zakopane. They essentially did a live video on the topic of regeneration, nutrition in law enforcement. Watched it on the day, definitely caught my attention as well. Unusual behavior, it seemed like they were making strange references, inside jokes of sorts. Definitely was unusual. At the time it didn't seem suspicious. I follow his Instagram account, he posts very interesting content. This video was definitely out of ordinary. It looked very odd. He was chewing on some tobacco and he was spitting into a cup, which definitely was out of character. Mateusz tries to create an impression of quote-unquote gentleman. Doing something like this on a live video, that would be in direct contradiction to that image. Not to mention that it's just plainly rude, right? It felt like he was doing that for another reason. In none of his previous videos you'd be able to see him doing that. This is a very long video, around 40 minutes. I did my best to translate it. Some of language nuances, some of these jokes may not translate very well. If at some point you get bored watching this conversation, feel free to skip to 1 hour 10 minutes if this conversation for some reason bores you.
Lecimy na żywo. Siemano. Jak leci, to leci. Dobra, słuchajcie, czekamy na Szymona. Gdzie jest Szymon? Come on, włączaj. Już najwyższa pora. Szymona. Dobrze wiecie, że zrobimy dzisiaj specjalnego live'a ze specjalnym gościem, czyli Szymonem. Szymon jest policjantem w Zakopanem. I jest Szymon i słuchajcie, porozmawiamy o czymś, o czym ja kompletnie nie mam pojęcia, nie znam się. Jestem w relatywnie dobrej formie, ale daleko mi do znajomości na kwestiach sportowych, żywieniowych, jakichś regeneracyjnych. A to jest rzecz cholernie potrzebna w służbie w policji. Jak tam Szymon? Powinien się już dołączyć do mnie. Bo wiem, że jest...
Siemanko.
Jest, wszystko działa. Witam cię.
Tak, to tam?
Kopela, kurde.
Słuchaj, do ostatniej kawy.
Dokładnie. Ja akurat zamyśliłem sobie tytoń do rzucia i możemy lecieć z tematem. Słuchaj, Szymon, ja już jestem po 30.
O, ty też?
Kurde, i to tak powiem ci, w połowie drogi już jestem, co nie? Zasadniczo znowu mi się zaraz cyferka zmieni, lekko w PESEL-u.
So this remark was very strange. Nothing changes in your PESEL number unless there are certain circumstances. Then you would have to request that number to be altered. Simply getting older doesn't make any difference in your PESEL number. Similarly to national insurance number. This remark was definitely strange. Didn't make sense. I don't know why he said that. From Time's perspective, I understand that this might have been some sort of a hint. Now here's a letter from a district attorney handling my initial case. They refused to investigate on the grounds of not being able to contact me. This letter addresses me as Mrs. During my work for this private aviation company, incorrect salutations was also a theme. It was a very common cause for complaints.
Po tylu latach w robocie, w sumie już w mundurach ładne naście lat, to już idzie, co nie?
No.
Jestem totalnie popsuty. Już nie tylko mówię o kościach, o ścięgnach, o wszystkich kontuzjach, ale jestem po prostu popsuty przez tyle lat roboty. Na noskach nakłada mi się zapewne złe odżywianie, nakłada mi się zły trening, nakłada mi się złe spanie, nakłada mi się stres. I tak samo jak wielu gliniarzy po 30, a siedzimy razem z kumplami i wiesz, przy piwku gadamy, że nasz organizm zaczyna nie wyrabiać na zakrętach. Dlatego poprosiłem cię o tego live'a. Zamknę okno, bo
Słuchaj.
w tle chyba tak słychać te kaszubskie orły,
Tak.
że masakra. Dlatego proszę cię o te live'y, ponieważ jesteś fighterem, jesteś sportowcem. Na pewno masz potężną wiedzę o regeneracji.
Znaczy, powiem ci tak.
Jak to widzisz?
Większość w służbie pracuje na przykład na 12 godzin, nie?
The moment he mentions 12-hour shifts, both of them are smiling, smirking, right? Which is very strange.
I masz to dniówka, nocka, tak? Bo tam sobie wiadomo, że tam masz od tego, że masz te przerwy między służbami. Ale no, powoduje coś takiego, że jest takiego jak roboty kortyzolu.
Kortyzolu mówisz. Weź ludziom powiedz, co to jest ten kortyzol.
Kortyzol jest tak zwany hormon stresu produkowany przez nadnercza. Steruje też nim mocno przysadka i kortyzol, on ogółem jest potrzebny, prawda? Bo jeżeli wstajemy rano, 8 rano, nasz kortyzol idzie w górę, dzięki temu się budzimy. Wiesz, jeżeli pracujesz na noc,
Both of them are smirking, smiling the moment Szymon mentions night shift.
to rytm dobowy całkowicie się zmienia. Praca w patrolówce jest taka, że wszystko jest dla ciebie stresorem. Przychodzisz do roboty, bierzesz giwerę, jest to stres. Idziesz na interwencję, jest to stres. Przełożony cię opierdziela, jest to stres.
Stop. Bierzesz giwerę. To nie jest wcale stres, to jest
Słuchaj, dla niektórych jest, słuchaj. Dla niektórych jest.
Oj tam, to się nie nadają do specnazu.
Oj tam. Także wiesz, i to już jest, stymulujesz kortyzol białym światłem. Bo białe światło mocno wpływa na dopaminę w mózgu. Praca w nocy, no słuchaj, człowiek jest tak skonstruowany, żeby spać w nocy, a nie ten. a
No,
nie...
skoro mówimy o śnie, prawda? Bo wiele
No.
osób boryka się z problemami z bezsennością, zasypianiem. Co na to poradzisz, na zasypianie? Nie ma regeneracji treningu, wzrostu umiejętności bez snu.
No słuchaj, po podstawowym stadium regeneracji organizmu jest sen. I tego nie zmienimy. Taka jest fizjologia człowieka. No, dobrym rozwiązaniem jest mieć sypialnię zaciemnioną. Całkowicie. I to wiesz, wchodzisz, to tak jak wchodzisz jak do lochu. Ciemno.
Sypialnia jak w lochu, wiesz, przypomina mi to taki film.
Ale taka jest prawda. Ja ci mogę powiedzieć, że byłem na obozie szkoleniowym.
No.
Miałem przerwy między treningami. Mieszkaliśmy w pokoju, to słuchaj, tam były takie żaluzje, te takie spuszczone na sznurek. Wiesz, schodziłem w dół i jak była drzemka regeneracyjna między treningami, no to całkowita ciemność. Żeby po prostu ciało poczuło się to jak w nocy.
Ja bym powiedział, że na przykład w sypialni totalny zakaz, kurwa,
Tak.
elektroniki.
Complete ban of electronic devices. It didn't sound natural.
Dokładnie. I to powiem ci tak,
Mamy poza sypialnią.
mało tego, powiem ci tak, 2 godziny przed zaśnięciem powinno być ten temat. W ogóle, całkowicie. Jak tu żyć?
Jak tu żyć, nie? To się dzisiaj nie da.
Ale co się nie da? Jest rozwiązanie tego, wprowadzili takie okulary specjalne. One zatrzymują 90, powiedzmy 98, 99 tego światła. Kopenhagen?
No. Wiesz, nie Kopenhagen, czyli tak, mamy pozbycie się telefonów, zaciemnienie.
Why would someone need to get rid of their phone? Each mobile device has a unique IMEI number assigned to it. If that phone was involved in criminal activity and law enforcement took note of that IMEI number, if you put a new SIM card in, they'll be able to trace it back. Swapping your SIM card will not work simply because anytime you put a new SIM card in and you connect to a network, they will take a note of your mobile number and they will take a note of your IMEI number. In a hypothetical situation where your phone is involved in some sort of criminal activity and you try to avoid being traced, it's one scenario where you would have to get rid of your mobile device, right? Hence the concept of a burner phone used by most commonly drug dealers, criminals, phone that you can discard after use to avoid being traced back by law enforcement.
Co jeszcze możemy dodać do higieny snu?
Zjeść na noc. Znaczy zjeść po nocy.
I jeszcze raz?
Zjeść po nocy.
Zjeść po nocy?
Zjeść posiłek.
Zjeść posiłek, przed snem.
No.
Przed snem zjeść posiłek.
Ty, ale co?
Ale popatrz, bo wszyscy mówią, żeby nie jeść
Proszę
ponad
cię. Proszę cię, daj spokój w ogóle. Wyrzuć te pierdoły, za przeproszeniem, do śmieci. Ja słuchaj, na noc, ja słuchaj, jem taki posiłek, że słuchaj, prawie że pęka.
Ja zjem ostrego kepsa, to mnie potem, wiesz, pogoni.
Tak,
nie?
tylko 2 razy.
No. A powiedz mi, dobra, a powiedz mi, słuchaj, co w przypadku, kiedy człowiek faktycznie nie może po tej nocy zasnąć? Bo mam na przykład kumpla, który wraca po ciężkiej nocy i on kurwa nie śpi.
A wiesz dlaczego?
No.
Nie śpi, bo ma kortyzol w górze.
My conversation with Franciszek in the evening of July 12th, I mentioned that I had been struggling to fall asleep. I struggled to fall asleep since July 10th, Friday, July 10th, 2020. Active, rough 2 days, July 12th, I'm absolutely exhausted, yet I'm still unable to fall asleep.
I co wtedy?
Trzeba go zbijać, no niestety. Nie,
Jak możemy zbijać? Jak możemy ten kortyzol zbić?
słuchaj, bo tu było takie pytanie, czy alkohol? Na pewno nie, szklana odchodzi w tym wypadku.
No, słuchaj, mnie na przykład alkohol nie usypia.
Nie, alkohol
Tak.
nie, to jest złe rozwiązanie.
Ja mam 34 lata, proszę ciebie. I
O! To jest boss. Naprawdę fajny suplement. Raz to brałem, brałem to cały czas, fajnie wycisza i ma takie sny, że to jest kosmos.
oczywiście do tego live'u zapiszemy. Będzie u mnie i u Szymona na profilu, więc jak najbardziej będzie zapisane.
What's interesting here is that Mateusz mentions saving this live video on both his and Szymon's Instagram profiles. He does so immediately after his guest Szymon mentions taking a supplement that gave him amazing dreams. I find it extremely interesting.
Tak, podsumowując ten element, mamy tak, zaciemnienie sypialni, dyscyplinę elektroniki, czyli całą elektronikę sypialni.
Tak.
Druga suplementacja, czyli magnez, ashwagandha, różaniec góralski, różaniec górski. Takich elementów marketingowych, tak jak na przykład ostatnie badania na przykład dowiodły, że BCA jest praktycznie
nieskuteczne.
Now, obviously, they could have been talking about BCA, the supplement aids in muscle recovery. They could have been talking about that. However, it's quite apparent these two are having some sort of a cryptic conversation. This conversation is full of references that are understandable by them, some of their viewers, right? What I suspect what they were talking about is this organization. It was a reference to this organization. Just to give you an idea, this is my wedding videography website, and around 2019, I stopped getting actual client inquiries. I started getting very strange, very unusual inquiries. This is 2020. Initially, I took it as some sort of a hack. It looked very strange.
Tak, nie trzeba tego w ogóle brać. Mój dobry kolega, lat temu z 10, rzucił się w pogoń za jakimś tam dziesieniarzem i po paru krokach naderwał sobie Achillesa. Inny mój kolega z ruchu drogowego, mój falusz, rzucił się tam za jakimś też bandziorem i skręcił sobie kolano. Ja, proszę ciebie, zrobiłem w pracy szybki zryw podczas biegu i zerwałem sobie mięsień brzuchaty łydki. I to jest problem. Ja, słuchaj, wiesz, wiedziałem o tym, wiesz, ponieważ przestrzegam przed tym policjantów, a sam padłem tego ofiarą. Mianowicie, nasza specyfika pracy w patrolu polega na tym, że przez 12 godzin siedzimy w radiowozie, zastani, w jednej pozycji praktycznie. Taka jest prawda, policjant patrolówki ma pracę siedzącą, bo siedzi, klepie kwity, albo siedzi w radiowozie i zbija bąki i nagle przychodzi, wiesz, ten sprawdzian, tak, sprawdzam i jest szybki zryw mięśniowy, co nie? I to jest straszny wysiłek dla organizmu, co nie? Ja ważę 100 kilo i dla mojego organizmu jest to bardzo duży wysiłek i można sobie krzywdę zrobić, coś naderwać, zerwać, skręcić. Powiedz mi, jak się przed tym uchronić, nie?
Powiem tak, trzeba się zastanowić, po co się ćwiczy.
No.
Albo ćwiczysz dla fajnych bicków i wiesz, żeby sobie wyjść na plażę, albo ćwiczysz po to, żeby ujarzmić bestię. I nic więcej, no.
Ja, słuchaj, mieszkam 400 metrów od plaży, nie? Ja na plaży nie chodzę. Ale to dlatego jestem gruby.
As you can probably tell, Mateusz is far from being a fat person that would be ashamed to go to the beach, right? I, on the other hand, I was always a bit on the chubbier side, but when I moved to London in 2013, within a year or two, year and a half, I supersized. I gained around roughly 30 kilos in a matter of a year without really eating that much. Gained weight so quickly that it gave me stretch marks on my belly, right? So ever since that, I was very reluctant to go to the beach.
Także trzeba się zastanowić, po co ćwiczymy, nie?
Temu właśnie wróciłem do regularnych treningów, naprawdę staram się coś zrobić ze sobą.
As mentioned earlier, Mateusz is definitely a fit person. I mean, he's at that point he was an active duty policeman, right? And as you can see from his Facebook profile, he's definitely a fit guy. At no point in time did he have to do something about himself. I, on the other hand, when this whole COVID thing happened, I decided to do something about myself because I literally live next to a park. So I figured I'm just gonna do 1 hour of walk every single day or every other day. Didn't take a lot of effort. So 160 kilos, 1 hour, 5-6 kilometers in an hour. for a 160 plus kilo individual. I think it was a great result. I would register most of my workouts or walks in an app called Endomondo that I had been using for a long time. I think since 2011-12. What's interesting is that app also just went out of business. I lost all of my workouts from that app. Luckily, all of these workouts were saved in Apple Health. What's interesting is that for some reason someone removed my workouts from Google Timeline. They were definitely there because I remember vividly checking how those circles that I used to do in that local park, how they looked like in Google Timeline. They were definitely there. It just at some point they were removed, right? Also, what's interesting is I checked my health records from the night of the camping trip, and as you can see, there are records of me moving around, at the very least my phone being active during the time where supposedly I was asleep, between 9 p.m. on July 11th and 4 a.m. on July 12th, 2020. It's indicative of me moving around, or at the very least my mobile phone being used, right? Someone moving around with my mobile phone.
Miałem taki okres, to nie, że tam z typem się na ulicy napierdalałem. I powiem ci, że było grubo, nie? Było grubo, bo miałem taki moment, że myślałem, że nie dam po prostu sobie rady z gościem, nie? I mówię, to jest taki dla mnie punkt graniczny, nie? Że robię się stary i muszę coś ze sobą zrobić, nie? To już nie chodzi tylko też o ból pleców, co nie? To też chodzi o ruchomość tych stawów, żeby nam się nic nie stało, co nie? Podczas służby.
Mobilizacja, jakkolwiek smarowanie stawów, to jest panewka biodrowa, czy to są kolana, czy to są, wiesz, łyty, czy to jest kostka. To jest klucz do długowieczności, no nie oszukujmy się. Ludzie, którzy trenują po ileś tam lat, zaczynają swój trening od po prostu aktywizacji tego panelu, tak? Czyli to super, to powinno tak robić. Tak? Czyli to super, to powinno tak robić. Powinno się tak robić, bo to jest aktywizacja tych rzeczy, które wymieniłem, tak? Później obręcz barkowy, korpus, wiesz, stabilizację w ogóle robić. Bo to jest klucz do długowieczności. No nie oszukujmy się, tak? Ja myślę, to co mi powiedziałeś, że to jest dobra podstawa do tego, żeby po prostu trening szedł w dobrym kierunku.
To jak powinniśmy trenować pod służbę?
No i to jest, myślałem o tym dzisiaj bardzo długo. Przede wszystkim, myślałem o tym dzisiaj bardzo długo. Przede wszystkim ja wychodzę z założenia, że trzeba trenować wielopłaszczyznowo. Jak to rozumieć? Zacznijmy do tego, co się daje. Siła i kondycja. Nic więcej. No siła i kondycja, no bo musisz tego typa wziąć.
Ale różne rodzaje siły, co nie? No bo mamy siłę eksplozywną, tak, która na przykład kettlebell,
tak,
rozwijają na przykład siłę eksplozywną, że jesteśmy w stanie całym naszym ciałem uruchomić z miejsca bardzo taki duży zryw. A też mamy taką siłę statyczną, która wynika na przykład z wyciskania na ławeczce płaskiego, co nie?
Słuchaj, przede wszystkim trzeba wiedzieć to, co jest, to wiesz, siła to siła, tak? Czyli po prostu mamy tą siłę eksplozywną, czyli tą ruską szkołę na ketlach. Czy to robić? Tak robić. Czy robić martwe ciągi? Tak robić. Czy robić ślady? Tak robić. Tylko wiesz, to nie może być postawione cały tydzień. Osobiście kupiłbym się na chwilę chwytów i wytrwałości. No bo tak, masz gościa, tak? Masz go złapać. W łapy. No to ten chwyt musi być wyrobiony. Musi być po prostu ten gość obezwładniony, złapany, nie? Nastawiony na ziemię. No ten chwyt musi być zrobiony. Czy ketle robią siłę chwytów? Tak robią.
Robią, bo cały czas
dokładnie.
Przedramiona zaciskają ci po prostu chwyt, co nie?
Dokładnie.
A w momencie, kiedy wyciskamy, to ten chwyt zupełnie inaczej działa, tak? Nasze nadgarstki, wyciskanie nie polega na tym, żebyśmy mocno zaciskali nadgarstki, co nie? Tylko żebyśmy wypychali z ramion.
to wiadomo, tam jest spięcie łopatek i ten ciężar obręczą barkową, całym tutaj mięśniem piersiowym, etc., etc. Bardziej bym się skupił na wielostawowych, czyli na pewno ciągi, na pewno podciągania drążku i podciąganie na drążku nie tyle na sam drążek, tylko nie wiem, na ręczniku, na pasie. Ja robię na pasie po prostu takim, wiesz, do kimona, podciągam się, na kółkach,
No.
wiesz, żeby ten chwyt cały czas robić, tak? Uważam, że dla mnie to jest świetne rozwiązanie. Ktoś chce sobie tak rozwijać, no bo musimy sobie zadać podstawowe pytanie. Po co to nam? Po co? Jeżeli ktoś chce robić trening, tak jak powiedziałem, kulturystyczny, niech robi, to nie, ale to się jako tako nie ma przykładania do roboty, no bo wejdziesz, faktem wyglądasz i to robi, wiadomo, pierwsze wrażenie jest ważne, tak? Ale czasami ci mali, bo ja nie jestem duży, ja tam mam 1,74 m i po prostu też radę dają. Ale czasami ci mali, bo ja nie jestem duży, ja tam mam 1,74 m i po prostu też radę dają. Dlatego ja tak, to jest dla mnie najlepsze rozwiązanie. Teraz jeszcze chcę, powiem Ci, od razu zainwestować w worek piłkarski.
Bardzo dobra rzecz.
Świetna.
Ale skończyły się czasy, że musisz, wiesz, wejść na ring, wiesz, trzy rundy się ponapierdalać, przebiec, słuchaj, tego Coopera, a potem, wiesz, tyle razy wycisnąć, tyle razy przepłynąć. Teraz się raczej na te crossfity nastawia. Crossfity oczywiście w cudzysłowie, co nie?
Treningi obwodowe, tak? Także, wiesz, ja mówię ludziom, że trzeba trenować wielopłaszczyznowo, trzeba być po prostu koniec, kropka, no. Nie ma złotego środka.
Ja myślę, że dzisiejszy rynek instruktorów personalnych i ogólnie tego, co się dzieje na siłowniach, jest już na tyle ogarnięty, że ci wszyscy instruktorzy z dupy są po prostu wykasowani przez tych lepszych i łatwo znaleźć mądre rzeczy.
Czy tam zażynają się, wiesz, do upadłości, wiesz, zakwasy non-stop w tygodniu, bo taki jest trening, trzeba robić, nie? Ja sobie myślę tak, nie no, zajebiście, super, no, ale rachunek stawi ci ciało i to powiem, że taki dość gruby i ja sobie zdałem z tego sprawę, że trening trzeba traktować jako długoterminową inwestycję i robić, ale nie zawsze więcej znaczy lepiej.
Też tak uważam, ja? Zwłaszcza, że ja na przykład zdarzyło mi się poczuć na treningu, tak sobie plecy przeciążyłem.
To jest tak, jakbyś kupił broń i pierwsze co idziesz, kupujesz, bo nie wiatr amunicji i na strzelnicę.
Bez sensu. Ja to nazywam produkcją ołowiu.
Rozumiesz? To tak samo jest z treningiem.
No.
Tak samo jest z treningiem.
To musi mieć wszystko cel.
I don't know if you can tell with all the pixels in front of his face. He clenched his teeth the moment he said that. Very, very indicative of something.
To musi mieć wszystko cel.
Dokładnie.
Jest celowy, nie?
Nie wiesz, co trenujesz, to trenujesz, bo to kręci się w kółko, tak? I najważniejsze w tym wszystkim jedno. Zajebista, surowa dyscyplina. Słuchaj.
Z dyscypliną to my tutaj w policji to mamy ogólnie problemy.
Ale słuchaj, no to zależy gdzie robisz.
Wszędzie. Słuchaj.
Zapraszam do mnie, słuchaj.
Ale, wiesz, jakbyś był moim kierownikiem, to kurde, czuję, że chodziłbym kurwa na wysokości lamperii, kurwa.
Leciałbyś.
Jak to się mówi w policji, chodziłbyś jak skóra na chuju. Słuchaj, ale czasami jest tak, trening to stres. Ci tak, mnie po robocie wycina, nie? Ja coś zjem lekkiego i kurwa padam na ryj, po prostu na kanapę. Czasami zdarza mi się zasypiać w ciuchach po robocie. Ja jestem tak wytyrany. Bo ja się czasami, wiesz, czuję się po prostu, mam takie poczucie winy, że nie zrobię treningu, że
Nie.
na te 3 km nie poszedłem pobiegać.
Też tak mam.
No.
Też tak mam. Nie. Nie, powiem ci nie. Nie, bo jeszcze tak, 12 godzin w robocie.
No.
Bania zryta, ciało zryte, jeszcze się jedziesz dojechać, nie wiem, bieganiem, czymkolwiek, czy książkami, czy na siłownię, gdzie twój kortyzol i twoje powiedzą, no sorry, i później nie zaczniesz w ogóle, bo tak jest naspidowany.
No.
Bo tak jest naspidowany.
No. No, to jest fakt. Bo czasami tak mam, że... No, to jest fakt. Bo czasami tak mam, że zmuszałem się do treningu. Byłem wyjebany jak koń po westernie. Robiłem jakiś tam trening i nagle się okazuje, że do pierwszej w nocy nie mogę zasnąć.
No tak, bo kortyzol jest na maksa i nercza cały czas pracują. Dodatkowo kortyzol przecież reguluje gospodarkę cukrową. I co? Gastrofaza na słodkie.
No tak, ja tu bez ciastek jestem kurwa uzależniony od ciastek. Ja to jak nie zjem ciastka, kurwa jestem chory.
No bo to wina wysokiego kortyzolu, tak?
A powiedz mi, słuchaj, czy człowiek po takim treningu na wysokim kortyzolu potem się gorzej chyba regeneruje, co nie?
Na 100%. No przecież zanim on zejdzie w dół, wiesz, zanim etas zejdzie z niego, adrenalina zejdzie, bo kortyzol i adrenalina, wiesz, testosteron, jak jesteś przemęczony, idzie w dół, no chyba, że wiesz, tam się suplementujesz. Ale kortyzol nie jest dobrym hormonem, jeśli chodzi o trening.
A popatrz, słuchaj, po latach pracy na nockach mamy tą gospodarkę hormonalną totalnie zaburzoną tą gospodarkę hormonalną. Czy warto się udać do endokrynologa, jakoś to regulować, na przykład farmakologicznie?
Wiesz co? Powiem ci, że nie odpowiem ci na to pytanie. Można iść na konsultację, sprawdzić, jak tarczyca, jak wszystko, robić sobie takie badania. Przede wszystkim trzeba się badać, no to jest adekwatne. Bieżnia i jedziemy interwały do zajechania. Po prostu, bo ja muszę być cały czas w formie. Nie.
Myślisz, że słuchaj, black metal jest muzyką relaksacyjną?
Nie, słuchaj, Sabaton. To jest najlepsza muzyka po prostu do rozciągania.
Jak? Sabaton.
No.
Kurde, ja akurat nie lubię Sabatonu, ale szanuję.
Nie, to twoje, to raz to, co powiedziałeś, to tak, jak najbardziej rozciąganie, mobilizacja.
Fajne pytanie, jak powinien wyglądać dzień przed 12 godziną nocką, żeby głowa nie leciała i przeżyć do 7 rano w spoko formie bez litrów kawy.
Wyspać się wcześniej.
Co nie? Ale...
I strzeliło, słuchaj, wiesz.
No.
Narodowo.
Czasami jest tak, ja na przykład dzisiaj na nocce nie miałem pełnej przerwy. Po 15 minutach dyżurny mnie wrócił z przerwy, dlatego no musiałem jechać, bo tam wiesz, 10 Ukraińców się napierdalało, co nie? Jadę, nie? Przecież to moi koledzy potrzebują pomocy, nie? Wjechaliśmy tam, no wiesz, w 3-4 godziny na pełnej piździe.
Dobrze.
A powiedz mi, wypicie takiego monsterka, tak czy nie? Bo ja na przykład uważam, że nie.
Nie.
Dla mnie Monster to jest takie, wiesz, ostateczne takie betonowe koło ratunkowe, że musisz, kurwa, pociągnąć.
Daj spokój w ogóle, jak ja się tego napiłem, niby zero, bez cukru, wziąłem łyka, to myślałem, że się zażygam. Daj spokój w ogóle, to jest w ogóle porażka. Ja w ogóle tych mózgotrzepów nie piję. No. Ja to ostatni raz piłem chyba w oddziałach prewencji. Jak byłem na warcie, wypiłem 3,5 tysiąca, co dostałem.
Oddziale prewencji.
No! Oj tam, no. W oddziale podwyższonej paniki.
W oddziale obok policji.
Tak. Z jednej strony
obok prawdziwej policji.
Mamy cię, nie?
No, ale wiesz, dla mnie to jest sama chemia po prostu, co nie?
Kawa.
No.
Słuchaj, kawa.
Kawa jest fajna, bo daje pozytywnego kopa, lekko podwyższa ciśnienie i jest pozbawiona tych wszystkich szkodliwych składników chemicznych.
Ale jak kawa działa, czy nie wiesz?
No, jak każda używka na receptory.
No, stymuluje mocno kortyzol.
Stymuluje kortyzol, tak? Czyli kawa podwyższa stres. Czyli jak już jesteśmy zestresowani, to nie warto pić kawy.
Wiesz co ci powiem, no, ale u nas wszystko jest stresem. Słuchaj, jedziesz na wakacje, to już jest stres, bo nie wiadomo, czy te wakacje wypalą.
Mamy tutaj też takie pytanie. Pytam, bo mimo tego, że staram się 2-3 godziny przespać przed nocą, zwykle około 2-3 przychodzi kryzys i realizacja jakiejkolwiek interwencji to walka z samym sobą. Nie mam takiego kolegę, w sumie, kolegę, to mój wieloletni przyjaciel. Znamy się już na 3 lat, z nim długo pracowałem i to był tak, chłop, który całe życie na siłowni, cały czas boks, Krav Maga i on też dużo dorabiał i on miał tak, że od 2-3 w nocy to jego wycinało po prostu, on już jechał na autopilocie i nie był w stanie od 2 w nocy już efektywnie pracować, a starał się regenerować, trenował, zdrowy, nie pił, nie palił i tak dalej, co nie? I mimo wszystko, jak wiesz, nadchodzi ten kryzys, no to co robić, nie? Jak wiesz, trzeba patrolować i nie da się wyspać.
No dobrze, ale słuchaj, pytanie, kiedy ma planowaną przerwę? Po to jest
tak,
przerwa.
Ale wiesz, że przerw się nie da rozplanować.
I tak, i nie. No zależy w jakim mieście, no tak ci powiem, no. Jeżeli nie, są 2 drogi tego, no wiadomo, że lepiej tam, mówię to nie, mogę powiedzieć nieoficjalnie, że lepiej po prostu, wiesz, przymknąć oko na 20 minut, niż wydzwonić w latarnię, no.
Ja wam powiem tak, ja to wezmę na gardła, nie? Lepiej przywalić w chuja w robocie, nie?
Ale słuchaj,
sensu, nie? Jesteśmy policjantami patrolowymi i spędzimy w tej patrolówce ładne kilka lat, co nie? I o 4 w nocy nie mamy tego komfortu, żeby pozwolić sobie na totalnym autopilocie z zamykającymi się oczami jechać na jakieś włamsko.
No to jest raz.
Więc lepiej przywalić w chuja i te 20 minut w rejonie gdzieś przekimać.
Słuchaj, tak.
To jest nasze życie, zdrowie.
To jest 15 minut, mając na uwadze bezpieczeństwo swojego partnera, no słuchaj, no o czym my rozmawiamy w ogóle?
No dokładnie tak.
Tylko wiesz, żeby to nie 20 minut, nie robiło się 2 godziny, a później ktoś przychodzi do ciebie i mówi tak, ty, no przecież mi pozwoliłeś. No wiesz, to tutaj szanujmy się, no nie, wiesz, o to w tym wszystkim chodzi, tak?
Ja wychodzę z założenia tak. K1 jest rozpisany, kontrole pojazdu zrobione, legitymowania zrobione, interwencje są opierdzielone.
Ty, słuchaj.
To można sobie pozwolić.
W skrócie ci powiem, jeżeli robota jest robiona, to słuchaj, to nie wiem jaki przełożony musiał być betonem, żeby po prostu się przyjebać. Przepraszam za wyrażenie.
No ja wiem. Oczywiście są tacy.
Tam jest ten przełożony. Dobrze wiesz.
Tak.
Miałem, że tak powiem, różne perturbacje z tego powodu. Też nocy jednej nie przespałem, bo miałem coś tam, po prostu na mnie szło. Ale nie oszukujmy się, tak? Wszyscy robimy w tym samym syfie, tak? I po prostu osoby, które pracują w patrolówce, które robią po 12 godzin, jeżeli ktoś jest zmęczony, to po prostu jak ja mam nockę, niech przyjdzie, powie, że jest zmęczony, niech przymknie to oko na 15 minut, tak? Tylko nie gdzieś tam w czarnej dupie, w czarnym borze gdzieś tam siedzi po prostu, tylko po prostu niech
jedzie na komisariat.
No, te 15 minut, niech po prostu niech mu się ten reset zrobi i niech po prostu zrobi to, ale żeby robota była robiona, a nie, że on mi powie, że on się stara. Wiesz, co to znaczy, że się stara? Ja się pytam tak, chodzi do mnie jakiś policjant, no ja się staram. No dobrze, ale co pan robi? A on mówi, no się staram. No dobrze, no wie pan co, starania, nic się nie dzieje. Trzeba robotę robić.
Trzeba robotę robić, nie?
No proszę.
Prawda jest taka, że powiedzmy sobie szczerze, praca w patrolu potrafi...
No?
Słuchaj, nieprzewidziany temat. Muszę bardzo pilnie zakończyć naszego live'a.
No.
Ja go zapiszę i wrócimy
No.
do tego tematu, zrobimy część drugą live'a. Panowie,
No
słuchajcie, trzymajcie się, regenerujcie się, ćwiczcie odpowiednio, dbajcie o higienę snu. Czasami warto pójść do lekarza, zdiagnozować się pod kątem wad postawy, gospodarki hormonalnej.
Dokładnie.
Przede wszystkim sami siebie nie oszukacie. Co pożyczyliście w pracy, organizmowi trzeba będzie oddać. Prawda, Szymon?
Wszystko w temacie.
No. Słuchaj, dziękuję Ci bardzo, bo ja z tej naszej dzisiejszej rozmowy się paru fajnych rzeczy nie nauczyłem. I na pewno wrócimy do tego tematu.
Słuchaj, no to dawaj, znać się, ustawimy i wiesz, później.
No. A ja myślę, że niedługo to się ustawimy, wiesz, osobiście w górach.
Słuchaj, zapraszam
A ja nad morze. Dobra, muszę uciekać. Tematy wzywają. Panowie, trenujcie odpowiednio.
Dozo, siema, pozdrawiam.
Hej.
Now, another interesting bit was that at 7:55 a.m. on July 12, 2020, I received a psychic reading on my email that I completely missed at the time, because obviously I was busy with other bits. It's just only when I started investigating this camping trip did I find out that there was a psychic reading, quite comprehensive. I would expect you would have to pay for. It looks very in-depth. There's a lot of detail. What's interesting is that this psychic is referring to me as L, not Lucas, but L, dear L. On its own doesn't really mean much, but in future episodes you will see that there's a theme of me being referred to as L instead of Lucas, including my unfair dismissal case with the private aviation company in question. On December 2nd, 2020, I emailed her about that reading, who ordered it, the transcript of my request for such reading. I did not get a reply. She did not reply to me. Furthermore, what happened is that original reading was deleted from my email. The only reason I was able to find this reading, it was attached to my message that I sent to her on December 2nd, 2020. It begs a question, why? It's not something that would be randomly sent. It looks like something that was ordered and paid for. Now the question is, who did that?
It is my pleasure to tell you that you may well be on the verge of something really empowering. Your life, for all intents and purposes, is ready to begin a new course, and I hope you take advantage. The changes you see take place could be immediate, but you'll never know till you take the next step. Please listen, my friend, and prepare yourself for this incredible journey you may soon embark upon. This reading is strictly confidential, and it's for you and you alone. As you know, you are about to enter a time of immense importance. As early as tomorrow, you could be entering an incredibly important time in your life.
So as you can hear, she predicts some sort of a bright future ahead of me. She mentions that there has been some sort of a fog chasing me around for a while. Very interesting.
What only matters is that your reading helps you right now. Keep in mind that these insights best apply when you are in touch with your true self, the one that is apparent in your birth patterns, and the one that is always to be found inside you. If you feel that these revelations may be a bit on the optimistic side, it is because there is something that has been blocking you from reaching this true potential, the potential that this coming period will be able to carry you to. In other words, it's possible there has been some fog pursuing you practically since childhood, and that you've had one problem after another, especially as far as money is concerned. You know what I'm talking about, the anxiety and suffering you may have had to put up with, as well as your present problems too. Some imposing influence might create an abnormal block to the way your true self should be living, as you will see when I complete your personalized reading. But what's most important is that things can change. And more importantly, you deserve to see them change. What only matters is that your reading helps you right now.
Now here are my conversations with Sebastian later hours on July 12th. I took some pictures and videos of them dressed up in their military gear, which was partially the reason for this trip reenactment.
że mojej mamie opowiadałem innym. Ja mam traumę po tym wyjeździe, po tej miejscowości i tym, co tam się działo, traumę. A jakieś takie, no tutaj w budynkach rowerem się przejechać, zobaczyć, gdzie jest jakaś budowa i tam wejść.
And this was obviously unintended, but looking back at this case, I think I might have been very accurate with my choice of words. Here I sent him a video that appeared on my timeline that I felt held somewhat over relevance to this camping trip, obviously in a joking manner. Those are my conversations with Franciszek during the evening hours of July 12, same time as previous conversations with Sebastian. Sebastian does reenactment. He posts a lot of pictures of him, in like military gear and everything. And what Sebastian told me was that a lot of his followers on Instagram actually think that he's an actual, real deal commando of sorts, right? So that's what Franciszek is referring to, that, that he doesn't like the fact that some people think that Sebastian is an actual special forces operator. And I explained to him that he never said so. He never made such a claim. It's just people assume that he is because the way how authentic his pictures look like on his social media account. Here I'm poking fun at Bogdan, supposedly a sniper. He was called in the morning, middle of the summer, sunny day. He was complaining about being cold. Quite funny. Now, this remark is obviously out of context, did not comment on that. I just thought it was some sort of a random banter. Yeah, here something appeared on that breathalyzer, very faded and disappeared very quickly. It looked somewhat like this. I run some numbers on it. It wouldn't be an amount that would, it's, you know, when you split it amongst all these people, none of them passed out. I am the only one who passed out, seemingly, right? When I woke up at 4 a.m., these people were talking loudly and everything. None of them was sleeping. So I'm the only one who got knocked down by the alcohol. And I assure you, I cannot drink anyone. Now, this message from morning hours of July 12 is very interesting. He would like to see an amount that would knock me off my feet. 5 liters of whiskey and coke. Very interesting. He's also asking about my weight. At the time I was lighter than normally. I actually went on a diet prior to this camping trip. I just wanted to make sure I looked my best. But yeah, I was on a 7-day diet prior to this camping trip. So I managed to be a little bit lighter than normally, right? I was at 155-ish. Without any apparent reason, he sent me a picture of himself and 3 of our common buddies, friends. Far left, Mati, very good friend of Franciszek, an eye surgeon, supposedly, followed by Peter, and then Franciszek, best friend, Biały, at least from my impression at that time, seemed to be Franciszek's best friend. It's a very interesting pose. These guys are flexing. Very out of place, for sure. Then he sends me a video from a shooting range, the shooting range that we went to later on that week. This will be in part 3.
Kabzior, jedziesz się ze mną przejechać do Gdyni?
This was very interesting because although I consider Franciszek to be my best friend, I'm in Poland very often, but it seemed very unusual. We rarely do stuff together, let alone go shopping, right? As a matter of fact, this was the very first time that he asked me out to go out shopping with him. Nevertheless, I was very keen. All of a sudden, in a matter of a couple of days, he appears the night before the camping trip and then immediately following. It seemed very unusual, very out of ordinary.
Teraz, zaraz generalnie, nie? No okej, mogę, ale powiedz, co nastąpi za te 5 minut? Ty dojedziesz, czy tam, kurwa, co? Ja teraz ogólnie byłem przed chwilą, kurwa, miałem twoje miejsce zamieszkania.
Instead of saying home, he says place of residence, which sounded very unusual.
Ale ja jadę w przeciwną stronę, bo muszę wziąć jeszcze z domu żarcie, nie? Także pewnie de facto u ciebie byłbym za jakieś 15 minut, nie?
Franciszek made a video call on that messenger group, and that messenger group also consists of Peter. He never did that before. You know, I never received a group video call from Franciszek. Very strange.
Jadę, także już możesz schodzić na dół, nie?
So when I came downstairs, I realized that I forgot my belt. I immediately called my mom and asked her to drop that belt off the balcony instead of going upstairs. And as she was doing so, as she was dropping off my belt from the balcony, this is when Franciszek appeared. He was driving up the road. He was holding his phone in his hand, filming me. supposedly, or that's how it looked like. So he was filming me as I was picking up that belt. He was smiling, it just looked funny. It was very strange because I never saw Franciszek recording me. This is the very first time I saw Franciszek recording me taking pictures, or usually I'm the one doing that. It was very out of ordinary. As I approached the car, he was laughing and he said that too bad he didn't catch that. And supposedly the moment my mom was dropping off the belt from the balcony, and off we went. For some reason he seemed very, very excited, very happy to be in my presence. He was very, very excited, very happy, and obviously that translated to me being happy as well. At some point, as we were waiting at the lights on street, he made a video call to his friend Biały. Biały picked up. He was either naked or in his underwear, most likely in a bathroom taking shower. He laughed and everything, and I started recording because this video call was just looked hilarious, right? And again, very first time I saw Franciszek making a video call, the very first time I saw him recording me, filming me, you know, taking pictures, videos of me, making some sort of a group video call on a messenger group that myself and Peter are part of. It was very out of ordinary.
Jeszcze raz! Ja każdy chciał też utrwalić, ale bez twarzy można utrwalać.
O, okej?
Pokaż.
Naturalny. Jeszcze raz!
Ja każdy chciał też utrwalić, ale
Ale...
bez twarzy można utrwalać.
O, okej?
Pokaż.
Naturalny.
What was also very out of ordinary was the fact that he was eating. He held a plastic container full of pasta with some vegetables, something somewhat healthy looking. He was eating that pasta as he was driving. Literally, like we would stop on the lights and he would pull out that plastic container with pasta and he would eat as we were waiting on, you know, on the lights. And then he would even eat whilst driving. That's, you know, I was like, I have never seen him doing anything like this. You know, I was amazed of his ability to multitask. Obviously, it looked funny. I thought to myself, you know, he trains a lot. Maybe his metabolism is so, you know, high that he literally has to eat all the time. You know, he trains a lot and everything. So I mentioned the camping trip. I told him that, you know, in the morning, everyone was strange mood in the morning, you know, everyone was off in the morning, and he said they were simply sad. It just sounded strange. It sounded as if he knew in what mood these people were, even though he didn't have the right to know because he doesn't know these people. It seemed strange, right? As we were driving, I told him the story that Sebastian told me about the burglary, the customs office burglary, and the theft of those confiscated cigarettes worth around 5-6 million zlotys. Curious about his opinion because obviously he's a police officer, so I was just curious to see if he knows about the case, if he's familiar with the case. He smiled, he nodded, he said that yes, that you know, he's aware of the case, that they have caught someone. It's either police officer and his girlfriend or a female police officer and her boyfriend. It's either of the two, but he smiled when I told him that story. I told him about the situation from yesterday when this Volkswagen B5 appeared directly behind me. I asked him whether this is some sort of undercover or something. He told me that there's no way that's any form of police because they wouldn't be driving old Volkswagen B5s, that they drive newer cars, right? When we arrived to park the car, when I got off the car, I was limping slightly and Franciszek seemed very concerned. I was just walking funny, I was kind of limping. So we went to the store, he did some shopping. He was interested in a pair of tactical boots, cost him around 400 zlotys, 80 pounds, quite pricey. Personally, I never purchased a pair of shoes that are 80 pounds, but then again, he's a police officer, so you know, this is technically, it's an essential tool for his job as a cop. I window shopped, I took a couple of pictures of some, you know, paintball replicas, and yeah, and we left. At that point, I realized that we were in the area where Teusz lives. Teusz invited me over to his flat. In 2012, I asked Franciszek about it. You know, Franciszek smiled and said that he wouldn't know. He wouldn't know if this is the area. I don't believe he didn't know. In March of 2020, he sent me a video that he met with Mateusz. He mentions that it's too bad that he didn't take a selfie for me. Pretty confident he knows exactly where Mateusz lives. As I mentioned before, Mateusz He seems to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular cops on social media in Poland. At this moment, former cop, but every cop in Tri-City knows exactly where Mateusz lives. It's a very, very expensive area, by the way.
Właśnie się widziałem z dopiero teraz pomyślałem, że mogłem kurwa selfiacza jebnąć dla ciebie kawzior.
And then as we were driving back to Gdańsk, I told him that I'm on furlough, that I'm technically, getting paid for nothing in government scheme, 80%. He told me that I should be considering different career choices, the kind of stuff that I should be doing, stand-up, that he went to a stand-up comedy recently, that the guy charges 100-something thousand per show, that he intonates his voice or something, that he sounds like David Attenborough. Obviously it was very memorable because it sounded very unusual what he was saying. He told me a story about Mateusz that Mateusz and Tomasz are mutual friends, acquaintances. They were patrol buddies together, but they got split up. They had a suspect in the back of their car who died of a heart attack, and that caused them to be split. And at some point, Mateusz was moved to a different precinct. They got rid of him. That's the expression he used, that they got rid of him. Very interesting. He also told me a story about his friend Mati, who is supposedly an eye surgeon or a doctor of sorts. He couldn't get into medicine studies in Poland, that he went to Czech Republic. He had to study medicine in Latin. He had to learn Latin in order to study medicine in Czech Republic. It sounded very convoluted. That's the reason I remember it very well, because it was just very, very odd story, right? He also patted me on my thigh. I took it as a friendly gesture. It just obviously was quite never happened before, so I took it as a compliment, like I said, in conjunction with him being excited in my presence and everything. At some point we stopped by in Morena area of Gdańsk to grab some ice cream. Initially we were supposed to go for some sort of non-alcoholic drink, but we changed our plans. We went for an ice cream. Google timeline shows that we entered a particular shop, but we didn't. It's inaccurate. We were standing outside having ice cream. We were talking about the presidential election result, that we both voted for the same candidate. Now, he mentioned that this particular party is better because it's better to have one leader who points in the direction with whom the group should be fighting with. Then we got into the car. We were joking around and stuff. At some point, I don't know in what context, but he came up with this thing called Flipper Boy. I asked him what was it. He told me to Google that. Essentially what it is, it's a series of videos of a mentally, physically disabled person having sex with a prostitute. There's multiple videos. It doesn't look very, very nice. So I watched one of the videos and I quickly closed it the moment I saw what it was. It was just, it's a meme of sorts, right? But anyways, yeah, Flipper Boy, right? So I Googled that, I checked it out, turned it off as quickly as I realized what it is, much to his delight. Then he dropped me off at my parents' flat. We had some chit chat, as we usually do whenever he drops me off at my parents' flat, additional banter. For some reason, one of the topics, he started talking about sexual intercourses, just typical lads banter. He mentioned something along the lines of ejaculating in a throat of a girl or something, that it felt good, that kind of a thing. I asked him what are the capabilities of eavesdropping, like phone surveillance, what kind of capabilities do they have. He said that there would have to be a physical access to the phone. They would have to have physical access to the phone in order to install any form of spyware, which logically speaking, it just sounded, it didn't make sense, didn't want to argue with him because obviously he's the go-to guy. He's the person who would have that knowledge, supposedly, but it didn't seem very logical. You read all these articles about spyware. It would be very difficult to conduct any form of surveillance if you had to do it physically. He also told me a story about his friend from the force, that he was with his mistress, and whilst being under the impression that he hung up the phone, he made a phone call to his wife. He forgot to hang up, and long story short, it led to a divorce. It was memorable. I filmed some of the construction workers going up the ladder with no safety equipment. Obviously it looked funny, so here it is.
Zabezpieczeń, wiesz, popierdala.
Szkoda, że tak mało drzewo,
Bez kasku, bez kamizelki, bez uprzęży.
As we were driving down so he could drop me off to my parents' flat, he pointed at the car. He said that look at this symbol, this particular sticker. This indicates that this driver is some sort of a combat medic. This is their symbol, and that's the reason I took that picture. It sounded very interesting. I did not know that before. It turns out that one of my neighbors is, all of a sudden some sort of a combat medic, right? So I took a picture out of curiosity, and that was it. He dropped me off. I went to my parents' flat, and that was it. And again, consistent with other odd remarks, right? This one was completely out of context. I thought he sent it to the wrong group. He talks about a car, Skoda Fabia, describes it in brief.
Skoda Fabia 1, silnik 1.4 MPI. Rocznik około 2000.
Now, at some point, my aunt called us. My dad picked up, was pretending to be me. My dad jokes around a lot, so obviously it didn't seem out of character, it didn't seem strange. I played along that joke, didn't seem very unusual, but looking back, there might be something in there. You'll see in future parts.
Jestem Łukasz.
No to są właśnie te chłopy, widzisz, się
No
wybuchają.
Łukasz, no
Ja
przecież,
jestem
no co mamy
gotowy
robić?
na cały czas, nie wiem, no to z
Ja tu
nimi.
robię film jeszcze, nie? Ja tu robię film jeszcze, nie? Co mam robić? No.
Dobra, przecież wiem, że to nie Łukasz, jeszcze po głosu poznaję.
No przecież Łukasz. No Łukasz dał mi Cześćka, no to cześć.
Rozmawiaj z Grzegorzem.
No rozmawiaj z Grzegorzem. Jestem Łukasz, masz numer.
Grzegorz z tej strony, co tam?
I sent her a video from a face app.
Co, idziesz, Marzena, z nami do tego, na piwo tutaj, w Gdańsku? Weź mam, opowiedz coś.
No, wybieramy się do Gdańska, ale młoda.
My aunt essentially asked us out to join her for a beer in Old Town later on that day, and so we did. After this conversation, my dad received a phone call from one of his friends. At some point, he was very annoying, like it was very loud. I don't know, there was something about it. I remember shouting at him at some point. I was like, just stop it or something. Another day where I felt a little bit losing my cool, right? Another one within those 2 days, so very strange.
Bo kortyzol jest na maksa.
As we were walking down the stairs, I remember seeing a female whilst wearing a face mask. And the reason it was memorable is because that female kind of resembled someone, and also the fact that she was wearing face covering. Bear in mind, this is summer 2020. Most people weren't adhering to all those mask regulations at all, let alone inside of an apartment complex. It looked as if she was trying to disguise herself rather than protect herself from COVID or whatever. And yet another video from Franciszek sends me a video of some sort of a workout in Gdańsk. I initially thought it was some sort of a drone shot.
Mogą tam z tamtej strony.
We went to Old Town. We met my aunt Marzena for a beer. She was by herself. He seemed to be smiling a lot, as you can see. That's the reason I took a picture. At some point, my dad picked up a call from someone, and he was pretending. Again, my dad likes to fool around a lot. As you can see, he mentions people that are with him, and he mentions Rysiek. Rysiek he's my uncle, he's the husband of Marzena, and he wasn't there, right? So it seems like a joke, right? Perhaps my dad was trying to create an impression. So Rysiek was definitely not there. It was just Marzena by herself and us, right? Myself, my dad, my mom, and my brother.
No to sobie, no to podejdź tu. Jesteśmy tu blisko jesteśmy. Dobra, podejdź. Czekamy. Marzena jest, Rysiek.
Można przyjść.
I Basia. Możesz przyjść. No.
On the way back, we stopped by to grab some alcohol, and there was a strange couple, a very loud couple that appeared, and that's the reason I started recording, because they were very loud. They behaved very loudly. That's the reason I started recording. And as you can see, as they approached us, it seems like they stopped by on purpose next to us. They're talking about not attracting attention whilst attracting attention, as they talk about not attracting attention.
Nie musimy na siebie zwracać uwagi.
No przecież powiedziałeś, że nie mam na siebie zwracać uwagi, to wcale na siebie nie zwracam uwagi. Tylko zwracam uwagę na to, że nie mam na siebie zwracać uwagi, to wcale na siebie nie zwracam uwagi.
And here are conversations with Sebastian from late evening of July 13th, 2020. So that's that. Stay tuned for part 3. Hopefully I'll release it this week. Just to give you some idea what strange things are happening in my life, definitely connected to this case. This is an employment contract. Last year I was employed by a company for 6 months. 6 months after being unfairly dismissed by the private aviation in question. Initially 3 months, that was later on extended by additional 3 months. This is the contract I was sent that I didn't even read, but when I scrolled through it, when I glanced through it, it was odd. As you can see, this clause in particular, right? By feminine we mean masculine and vice versa, and by plural we mean singular and vice versa, which doesn't make sense. I don't know how someone could have made such a clause, right? So make sure to follow my social media. As you can see, there's a lot of strange things that are happening, being addressed as Mrs. This video is obviously free of charge. If anyone charges you money for being able to watch this video, make sure to report it. It's absolutely free of charge. As I was trying to report this case in late 2020 to the police, and I was unsuccessful on a couple of occasions. I will also describe it in detail in future parts. On November 23rd, 2020, when I was trying to report this case to the National Crime Agency, I ordered Uber. For some reason, Google Maps showed their location in central London. Once I arrived at that location, it turned out that there was no National Crime Agency. There was no office, nothing. It was just a door covered with some wooden plaque, under construction kind of a thing, or under renovation. There was no office. As you can see, my Google timeline shows that I was in 2 different locations at the same time, which couldn't have been. It's impossible. My Uber record is correct. This is exactly where I went. The location of the National Crime Agency at the time on my Google Maps showed up in Westminster. Turns out that this office is actually somewhere completely else. There's other instances of my Google Maps being tampered with, let's put it that way. Certain locations names being tampered with. I'll get to that in future parts. I managed to call them. This is the reply that they sent me later on that evening after midnight. This is one of the quizzes organized by the customer experience team of said private aviation company. This would happen during the COVID-19 lockdown furlough. As you can see, it looks very out of ordinary.
It's so hard to get one of those in the UK. Like, you have to be dying for to get one of those.
Really?
Yeah. Even like a blood test, I wanted to get a blood test. Like, it can be a blood test to like, well, you have. Because it's hard to just test for everything. Like, you have to test only for specific things. I really do wonder how people get diagnosed sometimes. Like, I'm surprised that more people are not sick.
Yeah.
And don't know about it.